Welcome back. We will be stretching in this stretching video. And just trying to think what you'll need today. Mostly just blankets, always blankets. We're going to focus mostly on the hips today. So we did the last stretching video was kind of all body. But today we're going to really focus on the hips. So you're going to feel loosey-goosey afterwards. It's going to feel amazing. There is a lot to do. Like there's very few poses, but we hold them for a while this time. And I'm going to try to get us through 2 cycles and just try to see if the second time we do the same pose, you feel like you've gained some flexibility. Okay, I'll walk you through it though. Let's get started without further ado in your centering posture. So maybe that's Balasana Child's Pose, or maybe it's some other pose that's more accessible for you. Taking a moment to get all settled in. Best way to get nice and settled in is to soften and melt on every exhale. Feeling grounded and allowing everything to feel heavy and gooey. And we'll try to maintain that quality throughout today's class. For the next few moments, setting an intention for your practice today. There's so many benefits to yoga, just picking one of them and letting that resonate within you for a few moments. And then take 3 slow, deep breaths through the nose. And when all 3 deep breaths are complete, heading up and back into a downward facing dog. Taking your time. And maybe walking it out a little if that feels right for you. And then lowering back through hands and knees, all the way to Dandasana staff pose with the legs forward. And we'll begin our first stretch. Butterfly pose. Soles of the feet together, drawing the knees inward and then allowing them to fall out to the sides. I've got our timer started already. We've got a lot of poses to get through, taking them one at a time. If it's a bit of a struggle to stay upright, feel free to have the hands behind you. Otherwise, hands walk forward. So this isn't like traditional hatha yoga where you have your hands on your feet and the alignment is very specific. This is more focusing on the body's ability to gain mobility in the most effective way possible. And that's in a yin style stretch where we find our edge, we find stillness, and then we just wait. Even closing the eyes. There are a couple little tips and tricks, not a lot, but there's a couple that I have found works better to gain mobility faster. And that has to do with finding your edge. So I could push till I can hardly breathe, and I'm not harming myself, but it's not as effective. And the reason is because once you go to that extent of an edge, the body starts to kind of tense against itself. And ergo, you're not stretching anymore. You're kind of contracting. There is a bit of a technique where that kind of a technique is employed, but honestly, for that permanent flexibility that we're looking for, soft. So really feeling heavy and soft and letting gravity. That I think is the key word. Let your body stretch as opposed to pushing it into a stretch. Does that make sense? So taking a moment, settling in, feeling that heaviness. And we're done already. These are just 2-minute holds. Often we hold for longer in yin, but today we'll just hold for 2 minutes at a time, a little bit shorter. But like I said, we're going to try to flip through them all twice. Heading into straddle. So feet are apart as far as they'll go. And then find our timer. And same thing again, especially with this one. This one's a little more elusive, this one. So extra, what's the word? Like emphasis on relaxing and melting. Slowly, slowly start to come out. Just take notice of how much mobility you had in that stretch, and we'll see if by the next round it's a little bit more. It might be, it might not be, not a big deal. It's nice to just kind of notice though. Heading into shoelaces. So we've talked before about how to get into this one. So either through hands and knees or from seated, either way, winding up with the right leg on top. Okay, so if you're going through hands and knees, left leg goes behind, and we're in. So take a moment. Sometimes this one feels confusing. Which leg goes? So right leg on top, and trying to draw the feet inward. Right knee stacks right on top of left. Once you're in, closing the eyes. If you do have more mobility, feel free to walk the hands forward if you like. We're looking for your edge. So if you're like, well, where do I go with this? The answer is wherever it stretches the right amount. So if you're not feeling a stretch here, and you do when you lean forward, then the correct answer is leaning forward. All variations are safe, but some people feel more of a stretch upright than they do folding forward, and vice versa. So we want to find the edge without pushing past it. And then deliberately focusing on softening. So not gripping anywhere. If you are gripping a little bit, get yourself up on a blanket or a block. And slowly, slowly start to come all the way up. Maybe that's back through hands and knees. If it is, maybe just popping up and back into a downward facing dog. If that feels right for you. For some reason for me, I just needed to straighten out through my legs. Maybe it's Dandasana staff pose for you. And switching to the other side, through hands and knees. This time right goes behind left, scooching those knees together, stepping the feet apart, and sitting back between the feet. Adjusting however you need to get one knee on top of the other. Both sit bones grounded as much as available. And we'll get our timer going. What I'm trying to do with all of these videos is to help you develop your practice. In a studio situation, it's easier for the teacher to have everybody enter and exit each posture exactly the same, because otherwise then you're teaching two different classes. I do manage to somehow do like phase 1, 2, and 3 or options in classes, but for the most part it's easiest to have the whole class do the same thing. The benefit to having a home practice is you get to enter and exit the way that you want to, so long as it's safe. So I'm trying to teach you all the different safe approaches so that you can find what works best for you. And not always is it the easiest version, right? You might be needing that extra challenge with some different situations. Anyways, we soften, we melt. To come out, scoop the belly in, coming forward through hands and knees, or unraveling, unwinding to Dandasana staff pose, whichever works best for you. Taking a moment, if you're in staff pose, maybe a couple little knee taps. And then we'll all meet in Dandasana staff pose, preparing for square, or in Hatha we call it Agni Stambhasana, fire log pose. We'll start with the right leg on top of the left. So however you need to enter that posture, maybe it's a bit modified where you're leaning back onto the hands. I want to get that timer going so that we can have time to go through this whole thing a second time, but still keep it nice and short, nice short classes, really effective, efficient classes. So as always with this pose, if this isn't enough, maybe folding forward, and eventually maybe even turning and facing that top foot. Softening and melting. And slowly come on all the way out and release. Giving yourself just a moment between sides. And here we go. Left crosses over right. And I'll flip our timer. Closing the eyes, settling into it. And slowly, slowly start to come all the way out. Oh. We talked a little bit before about how there's memories in our hips. We store memories, of course, in our brain, but there's also little pockets in our body that store memories, and especially the hips, doing hip opening poses. Sometimes odd memories pop up, and I will tell you one of mine in just a moment, heading into low lunge pose. So for this one, right foot steps forward, back knee lowers back onto a mat or a blankie. And then lowering down maybe onto a block or onto the floor, or maybe not at all. Try to keep the spine long and as low as possible, keeping the elbows level. So we're trying to not do this. It's not like it's always just better to have the body even. Okay, so if you're going to be up a little bit, try setting both elbows down onto a block. Okay, so did anybody watch that movie, Julie and Julia, about the girl who she really liked, Julia Child, she was a chef. And this movie was brilliant. It was back in the days, like probably before Facebook, but this Julia started this blog and she decided she was going to make, what was it, like a recipe every day? Or was it all of the recipes in the book in 1 year? And she averaged like a recipe a day or something like that. And it's just going through my mind. I love that movie. I hate cooking. So I was in my stretch thinking, A, I don't know why anyone would want to do that, but B, yay for her. Just the amount of organization that would take, the expense of that. I mean, you got to eat anyways, but I think some of those recipes were like really, I mean, they were French, like really high quality, good ingredients, which cost more usually. And not all of them turned out. And it was just, I just loved the commitment to that. I thought that is just brilliant. I really liked it. Anyways, so I had like the movie going on in my head and thinking, wow, that's incredible. Like, I wonder if she planned all of it out or just thought I'm just going to plug away at it, or how she figured that out. And now I feel like I want to watch that movie again. And look at that, we're already done the first side. Slowly, slowly, heading into the other side. So yeah, hip opening posture is the strangest, like why would I think of that movie right now? I'm not entirely sure, I have no idea. Anyway, there you go. Oof, that. And here we go, starting the timer, lower down as much as available, breathing deep. Trying to find stillness, trying not to let thoughts enter your mind like mine did and totally took over my brain. Or I had just about the whole movie went right through my mind in 2 minutes. Trying not to think of those things. But it is interesting. It's nice to acknowledge the thought like, oh, that's a weird thought. I'll think about that later. And then carry on with your stretch. And slowly, slowly, come on all the way out. Okay, I had no movie plot lines going through my mind that time, so yay. Let's fly through all of those again. I don't know if I'll have enough time to do every single one, but we'll see what we can come up with. So let's head into butterfly once again, just like we did at the beginning. Soles of the feet together, let the knees tip out to the side. We'll get our timer started. Right from the get-go, so much easier than the first round. Just check it out. How are things feeling? No judgment, just notice. Noticing and evaluating has nothing to do with self-worth or self-confidence or anything of the sort. We're noticing what's consistent with our body, what's inconsistent, what's improving, what's not improving, and it's all factual evidence that will help us progress. No attachment to the outcome. In fact, that's a big underlying theme of yoga. The whole thing, the whole philosophy of yoga, trying not to be tied to the fruits of your labors, the fruits of your actions. In yoga, when you're on the yogic path, not just like dropping into classes here and there, but when you're truly on the yogic path, you do things, actions, you speak words, you help people for the sake of helping those people, for the sake of doing those actions, for the sake of saying those things, not because you want them to appreciate you or because you want them to reciprocate or because you want A, B, or C, which is challenging to our natural sort of instinctive behavior is I scratch your back, you scratch my back, which is obviously how we want to behave. We want to be appreciative if someone gives us something. We feel the need to reciprocate. But as yogis, trying not to think if I do this, this will happen. Just what do I feel like I ought to do in this moment? Do the next right thing, not worrying about what will happen. So it's the same thing on the mat too. If I stretch, just leave it there. Like you will get more flexible, but not focusing on the goal and so much. Yes, you can have goals, but now just leave them, Now we stretch because I want to feel, because I'm stretching because it's good for me. Because. I'm stretching because if once you put an attachment to that goal or like a date or a deadline, which I should do a whole episode on this because it is okay to do that. Come on out. But then put it aside. which really deserves a longer conversation. So set your goals for sure, but then do the practice, do the practice because it's good for you, because it's what you do. And then when you do reach your goal, you're like, hey, cool, I reached my goal. But if you fixate on your goal and you don't get it as soon as you think you will, you might be disappointed. Not to say disappointment is the worst thing in the world. Oh, there's so many philosophical parts to yoga. For now, let's just soften into the spaces that feel that stretch, shall we? Closing the eyes. Slowly, slowly, start to come all the way out, and we'll head right into shoelaces. Right leg on top of left. So however you need to head into that posture. And we'll begin. Closing the eyes. Slowly, slowly start to come all the way out. My shoelaces was definitely more flexible that second time. That's the beauty about just keeping it simple. So we'll head into the other side, and we're only doing 5 stretches today and repeating. Here we go, other side. Keep it simple. Repeat poses until you become proficient with them. It's not as exciting as keeping it super spicy and variety. Perhaps. I'm still getting quite a bit of variety in this challenge. A nice mix is good. Enough repetition that you can really progress, and enough spice or variety that it's not too stagnant. Slow, deep breathing. And slowly, slowly start to come out. Oh, if you're thinking, Carla, I don't know if I can do much more. Fear not. This is the last stretch. And it's our square stretch, or Agni Stambhasana. So right ankle over left knee. Here we go. Timer's on. Eventually facing a top foot. Heart towards the foot, or the sternum towards the foot. And slowly, slowly come on all the way out. Preparing for the last time, last side, last stretch of the whole class. And I got a couple of wet noodles for legs again. Okay. My legs are like, no. So if that's you, just go gentle, gentle, gentle. It's not one of those no pain, no gain. If your body's like, I think I need a rest, don't go as far, okay? Although on the last side, that's what I felt getting into it. And then it felt pretty good after a few moments. So just keep tuning inward, okay? This is a lot of hip opening in one class. I sort of snuck you in from the 0 to all of a sudden we're closer to the hero part. And don't be afraid to pull back a little bit. And slowly, slowly, oops. Oh, come on. All the way out. See, my legs were like rubber or jello, and now they don't want to move. Okay, go. We're ready for Shavasana. I'll just be here. So grab whatever you need to feel cozy. Isn't that amazing? Oh, you're going to feel so wonderful later. Be sure to have lots of water after your practice today, but not before you enter a well-deserved Shavasana. So in your Shavasana today, take a moment, an extra moment. So typically in Shavasana, we're like this, right? Because we did so much hip opening, just for this one, you might not, but you might feel like a little bit of internal rotation for the legs during your Shavasana feels better. Okay, so modifying our Shavasana because of such a deep hip opening practice is okay. So don't grin and bear this if it's too much. Take a moment, just try this one, try that one, and whenever you're like, okay, I'm good, then closing the eyes. Softening everything, but especially through the neck and the shoulders, and all the way down the arms. Softening through the belly and the full length of the back. And then taking another few moments to really loosen through the pelvis, the hips, all the muscles surrounding the hips after all that work we did today. Almost thinking about, we talk about the hips are the junk drawer of life. So any of that ick, whatever we've been holding on to and gripping and holding on to, let it go. Almost like you can visualize in your mind's eye, almost like smoke. It just goes away. It floats into the air and it goes away. Anything that you are holding on to in your hips that we released today, watch it go away. Up into the air, all the way into space. Any guarding you might have been doing, any holding on to emotions, holding on to past events, let it go. And then softening all the way through the legs, down to the ankles and the feet. allowing your whole body to feel heavy. And finally softening through the face, softening around the eyes, and even the muscle between the eyes. Just letting it all go. And starting to come back. Wiggle the fingers and the toes. And gently roll your head from side to side. Then reaching your arms above head on the floor, give yourself a big stretch, feeling totally refreshed. And bending your knees one at a time. And gently roll over to your right side, giving yourself a moment or two here. And slowly start to press yourself all the way up to a comfortable seated position. When you arrive, palms facing up on the knees, inhale, sitting up tall. And exhale, softly close the eyes. Taking those final moments to reconnect with that intention you set for yourself today. Knowing you're one step closer. Thanking yourself for showing up to your practice today, for taking care of you. And one more silent little thought or thank you for someone who deserves it today. And slowly open the eyes. Namaste, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you next time.